Today, I am speaking to somebody who's, let me use the word, brilliant, talented, humble, right? And we are talking about choosing a passion. And we're speaking to David Kelly, the Chief Legal Officer of the Golden State Warriors, the most dominant basketball team of the decade. And we're also talking to Cap D. Yep, they're both the same person, an hip hop artist that has just released an album called Contradiction and has been making music and hip hop since the 90s. So this is nothing new for him. And what I'm really excited to talk to him about is what do we do when society tells us that you have many talents, you have many passions, but you gotta pick one. And I'm excited to talk to somebody who is able to strategize his life in a way where he's dominating his passions in a powerful way. So, David, welcome. What drives your passion more? Is it the side of your legal job or is it the side of your music?
To be quite honest, it would be the side of my music.
Commercial rappers spin a hole like a centerfold. They grinning gold, but they finna fold.
And I think that's borne out by the fact that if no one was watching, if no one was paying, I would be working on music. And it's not even just to put it out. Sometimes it's just for me. It's just to share with maybe a close group of friends. So yeah, I think that's my truest passion. And
what does that do for you? Because if no one is paying you, and what we know of hip hop is the track is, and this can be connected to success. If the track is to make a lot of money through your music, and have the biggest agents behind you pushing your music out, and then coming up with a video that is appealing. If you're not doing that, what does this music do for you?
Yeah, it's pretty cathartic for me. To me, the root of it all is writing. It's even beyond the music is the writing. Like, I consider myself to be a writer. I work on music. I'm a hip hop artist, but the root of that is the writing. And so I love the challenge of there's a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen on a computer. And the only thing that's going to be there are my thoughts. If I don't have thoughts that are relevant or interesting, they don't make it onto the page. And so it's starting with that blank sheet, and then it's whatever you create is what's there afterwards. That's the challenge.
So now I'm understanding why I love that attribute and how it got developed of humility, because you never wrote your music for fanfare or applause. You wrote your music because you are somehow inspired by seeing a blank paper. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And it comes from a position of privilege. Like, look, I was raised where I didn't have to use my music in that way. I've always had options where I didn't have to use my music in that way. So it's not anything, noble with respect to me. It's circumstances, right? And so other people weren't necessarily born into those circumstances.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that then. You use the word, you have circumstances. You have the privilege to do that. What kind of circumstances and privilege and motivation did you get to have this love for writing?
So it goes back to my parents. So born into a middle-class family, both of my grandfathers on both my mother and my father's side were both musicians. And so music was always part of the house. Education was always valued. Writing was, so many of my aunts and uncles are educators. And so writing, there's a paramount, a premium put on writing and the ability to write. My father's a lawyer as well. And so, thinking through issues and analyzing was just always part of the family. And so for me, it was basically taking all of those things and putting them into the current, I'd say, motif or the current genre of when I was growing up, which was hip hop. And so it's basically taking all of those influences, all of those experiences, and then the genre of hip hop, which is right there for me, and it allowed the vehicle to express it.
So let me ask you, do you think the fact that you had the example of your father and you had the example of thinking through things, does it make you an effective songwriter when you're talking about critical issues?
I hope so. The people listening would have to say whether or not I'm
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. I think that the ability to analyze, the ability to work through a situation, um, the ability to strategize, even sometimes writing a rhyme is there's a strategy to it. There's, all right, I want to have a certain opening. I want to get to a certain place. I want it to be interesting in the middle. You know, this, it's some, not always, but sometimes there's a lot more going into it than maybe a lot of people hear. And so maybe only I appreciate that, but that's enough.
So first of all, I appreciate it too. So there's an audience of one other than you. But I will say what you have actually described to me when I listened to it of how you describe your writing, David, is the strategy that one can apply to life. I mean, literally, right? You want to go somewhere, you want it to be it's interesting in the middle so you don't give up.
That's
And
right.
then it's point A, point B, point C. So now let's go into you have this passion, you have this talent, you have writing inside you. Now I want to go into the lawyer aspect of it. Your profession as the chief legal officer for the Golden State Warriors gives you immense responsibilities of what the team has to deal with. In fact, I think you're even in charge of saying yes to political statements or any public statements that the team states. So it's a powerful place. Before we go into your grind there, I want to know if you feel there's a friction at all, because the legal training for anyone who has ever met a lawyer and for anyone who has been to law school or does not want to ever meet a lawyer thinks that they're very dry, methodical, and it kind of takes away any creativity. So do you ever see that tension in your two worlds, and did you ever experience that, I guess, when you were in law school?
I do. I did, and I still do. And that's just, I think, part of life. There's that tension, and that's the song Contradiction kind of deals with that, that there's a contradiction there. In some ways, it's a seeming contradiction, maybe a contradiction on the outside. It appears to be more of a contradiction than it is, but internally, there's a bit of that as well. The writing is the connector between the both, though. Writing is the connector between music and between being a lawyer. The ability to write, to analyze, to express yourself, that's the one skill. But yeah, it's being used in very different ways. I find myself having to be the much more conservative person in terms of my risk tolerance and focusing on the downside of issues much more than being the entrepreneur that I was when I was trying to start my music company.
Mhm.
And so there's a tension there, but you have to sometimes know what your role is and be able to play it. You don't necessarily have to be your role. You don't have to live it 24/7, but you know that when I'm stepping into these shoes, this is what's needed. This is the position that I have to play. This is the value that I'm bringing, and bring it. At the same time, when you have the ability to be creative in that, then you can bring that other aspect of yourself to your job as well. Like you never put it to the side completely. And so that hopefully makes me a better lawyer, that I can, chime in on areas that are outside of just the purely legal.
I think the key thing is what I'm hearing from you is when you have these two talents, and I think this brings kind of reaffirms another aspect of road that you've taken to cement humility as part of your attributes, is that you take the responsibilities that you have been given serious enough to say it's not enough that I'm talented, right? It's not
Yep.
enough that I'm talented, and we see a lot of talented people go nowhere,
Right.
right? So you have this talent, you have a skill, you've developed this writing skill, you've been able to use the skill to merge your two passions, but then you don't sit back and say, okay, now the universe is going to come in and discover my talent. No, you have to show up and be present. Do you ever find it problematic to be present in either realms?
Yeah, I do. There is a priority that I have to put on one or the other at times, and it almost invariably is the legal career that gets the priority, even though that's not the passion, right? And so there's the tension right
Well, I'm going
there.
to stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there because you just stated to me that that's not the passion. So
Right.
I've described them as both passions for you. Do you describe it as something else?
Well, the passion for me is the music and the writing. I enjoy my job.
Okay.
I mean, sports. So working for the Warriors makes it a lot easier. Let's just
Good.
when I was at the law firm, it was a little bit more difficult. It was a bit more of a grind. It's not that way at Golden State. So as a kid, I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a basketball player. Like those were the two things that I really wanted to be. And so I'm only one of those, but I'm close to the other one.
But you're close to the energy. You're close to the energy,
Yes,
right?
yes. And so there's a
Okay.
lot of perks with the job that feed into one of my other passions, which is
Okay.
sports specifically.
Okay. So this goes into strategy. This goes
Yeah,
into strategy. So you found a way. You're not a basketball player. You right? I mean, you play
correct.
basketball, but you're not a basketball player, right? I don't want to insult you, but you play basketball. So what I'm saying is, you found a way to be close to what you love, and using the skills, the God-given skills that you have been given to kind of have an impact in that world, because you have a
Yes.
huge impact on those basketball players and that team, right?
I don't know, huge. I have an impact.
You have an impact, yeah.
No, it was a lot of good fortune went into it. Right place, right time. Um, Obviously hard work and in some work ethic as well. And to your point, strategy. And it's, figuring out how to navigate and having people to help you navigate from point A to point B so that I could be in a position where, yeah, I'm using my skill in a way that I was trained to do, that I enjoy doing it. And for an organization that's involved in an area that has always been a passion of mine. And quite frankly, an organization has a lot of really good people in it, who are consistent with some of my, my values as well. And so it's been, none of those I could have created all on my own. All of those took a lot of other people to create, and I showed up at the right time.
So let me ask you now, you've shared that you were in certain circumstances which gave you role models, which gave you, an environment for a love for writing. And you are also stating that many people have helped you along the way. But for somebody who's sitting back and wants to be the future you and wants to employ your strategy, but does not have that privilege, right? Does not have those circumstances. What's your response to them?
Two things. So the best advice I think my father ever gave me is to try to create options. And so that's the key. Whether you're born with a bunch of options or not, the key is to try to create more options for yourself. And so when choosing a major in college, I tried to choose one that created a lot of different options. I was an English major because I didn't know if I wanted to go to journalism school, or if I wanted to be a teacher, or if I wanted to be a writer. And so I chose sort of a middle path between various different potential options. So I think create options is the first point. And all of us are in a position where we can try to create more options tomorrow than we have today. And that continues for me now. The other is being happy in the moment. And so even while I'm trying to strive to become a partner, or strive to get away from the firm and into, a sports and entertainment company, or just, when we met in law school, all of those times I was still consider myself happy. I was happy with myself. I was pleased. I was grateful. So I'm striving towards things, but I've never considered myself to be an unhappy person. And so I think you can strive through a lot of different issues if you allow yourself to be grateful and happy in the moment. And it's easier to be happy in a moment when you're creating options.
I want to thank you for having this conversation with me, but I want to thank you for being so honest and authentic. And I want to thank you for being you. Thank you so much. And
All right.
thank you for joining me.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
I'm so glad we had this conversation, and I'm leaving inspired and really leaving humbled. So with that, as always, and I am with you, I bid you peace.